So this happened over the weekend. I'm sure we all saw it, but the minimum wage pretty much dead in the water. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris really have no interest in fighting for that. And this is kind of what happens when you enable this behavior, when you don't do things like force the vote. And we're gonna go through it in this segment and show why that strategy, that tactic, that path is actually the right way for progressives to go if they have any hope of actually holding this administration accountable and actually pushing this administration left, like what was sold to the people who didn't want to vote for someone like Joe Biden, or who were hesitant, or who at least wanted to extract something before giving our undying loyalty and fealty to someone who has always legislated for corporations and against the working people. So let's go through that, and let's see what happened over the weekend. We see here that Biden, and so can Biden do this on his own? Of course not. He can't do it on his own. He needs to put this through reconciliation. He'll need those 50 votes. He'll need to get people like Joe Manchin. He'll need to get people like Kirsten Sinema on board. He might have to twist some arms, do some things like that. But that's what he pitched, that he was the unity candidate. He said he could go talk to conservatives on the other side of the aisle, let alone conservative Democrats who ostensibly agree with more so are on your side. They're in the Democratic Party. And so he said he would do this. Well, last week, before the parliamentarian, who is this unelected person, staffer essentially in the Senate, who kind of says if things can be put into budget reconciliation or not, unelected, no one's really even heard. I hadn't heard of the parliamentarian before this week, so I know most normal people out there have not heard of this person. They said that the minimum wage could not be included in the reconciliation bill. But even before that ruling came down, when it was kind of being talked about, this is what Biden went out and did. He privately told governors that the minimum wage hike likely isn't happening. Now, does that sound like someone who wants to fight for the minimum wage? Because I've seen clips of Joe Biden in the 90s, in the 2000s, lobbying hard against his own party for things that he thought was right, things like the crime bill that he helped write, or the bankruptcy bill, or the Iraq war that he vociferously supported, even after 2 to 3 years after the invasion happened and people realized it wasn't going anywhere. He was still supporting it, loud, vocal. But something like this, which he claims to really be for, and really was the only concession that Bernie and progressives, with hard concession that they got, in last year during the primary, when Bernie was pretty much getting ready to drop out, Bernie was going to deliver his coalition, and the minimum wage was like the one solid thing that Biden said he was going to do. But privately, he's telling governors that the minimum wage hike likely isn't going to happen. That sounds like another Democratic politician from 2016 who had a public and a private position. See, his public position is that he supports this and that he wants this. He wants a minimum wage hike because he understands that it's impossible to live on the minimum wage at $7.25, what it is right now. But privately, he's telling governors, it's probably not going to happen. It's not going to be in the bill. Wow. That's super telling. That's super telling. And why do we need a minimum wage? Well, let's look at this tweet from Alex Millard. She says, I believe it's her, yes. She says the average age of folks making minimum wage in the U.S. is 35. 90% are not teenagers. Not teenagers. So this whole thing that, a lot of right-wingers, conservatives like to say is that the minimum wage is just for burger flippers at McDonald's. First off, okay, they make your food. Do you not want the people making the food that you love so much to make a livable wage, to be able to go home after working 40 hours and be able to survive? Do you not want that? So even if it was just burger flippers, 18-year-olds, whatever, if you work for an hour, you deserve to be paid at least $15. It really should be closer to 20. Really should be closer to 24 if it kept up with inflation since the 90s and worker productivity. 90% are not teenagers, but no matter what age workers are, they deserve a living wage. 100% right. It doesn't matter how old you are. You deserve, if you work an honest 40 hours a week, an honest hour's worth of work, you deserve a wage that you can live on. That's why we need the minimum wage. In 2017, 58% of all wage and salary earners earned a living wage. 58%. This is literally life or death for a huge amount of the population. And what happens with that money that they make? They, all that extra money that they get making $15 an hour, they, take it to tax havens or, just buy super expensive things that, don't really stimulate the economy, like, $100,000 jewelry and yachts. Oh, wait, no. That's what rich people do when you increase their wages. What happens when you increase a worker's wage? What happens? They pay the rent. They get groceries. They can send their kid to daycare, right? They actually stimulate the economy. They buy things that helps stimulate the economy. They spend it at small businesses that you claim to care about so much. This is what happens when you increase the minimum wage. That velocity of money, it actually stimulates an economy. So this is vitally important. And what does Biden do after the Senate parliamentarian issues that ruling? By the way, which they can either fire the parliamentarian or just overrule them. The vice president can overrule them. Yes, it takes 50 votes, but are you going to go get those votes? Because you said you cared about the minimum wage. So are you going to do anything for it, or are you just going to quit and say, nah, I'm good? Well, let's see. Has Biden done anything yet? Great name. I'm wondering the same thing on Twitter. Said, today is the 41st day that Biden and Harris have pretended they can't fulfill their promise of a $15 per hour minimum wage. They can overrule or fire the parliamentarian, but they've simply chosen not to. And it says Biden was disappointed in Senate parliamentarian ruling, but respects the decision. Well, if you really care about something and you understand how important this is, why would you respect that decision when the Republicans wanted to put the Bush tax cuts through reconciliation? The parliamentarians said no. They said, all right, get out of here. We'll get another one. We'll just get someone in here who wants to get this done. Boom, done. That's what they did. Because when they want something, they go out and get it. But when Biden wants something, I don't think he really wants it. When he wants something, he just respects process and he respects the decision. And there's just nothing he can do. His hands are tied behind his back. But you can see here from the soapbox, it says the parliamentarian has no official power. The vice president can overrule that person, has the power to overrule that. And the Senate, as the leader of the Senate, as the, kind of the referee of the Senate, can overrule that. So that's false. That's not true. And you see vice president here, see the Democrats, they love to tweet nice things and things that make you feel good. They make you feel good inside. They know the words. Like Kamala Harris here, she says ready to serve. Well, there's millions of people that stand to have their lives improved by you serving, you doing your job and serving. Because she says she's ready to serve and it gets 2.3 million likes. Oh my gosh, aren't you so excited? She's ready to serve, y'all. And so, I edited this in because, let's be honest, she's ready to serve corporations. She'll serve corporations. She did it as the DA in San Francisco. She didn't prosecute Steve Mnuchin's bank, I think it was One West Bank, when her office found a lot of criminality there, criminal acts, and said if they kept investigating further, they'd probably find 1,000 more. And she decided, no, we won't prosecute him. Turns out he gave money to her campaign, her district attorney campaign. She turns around, doesn't prosecute him. He turns around, becomes the Secretary of Treasury years later, and guess whose administration? Donald Trump. You see how they play for the same team? It's wild. It's wild. So she's not ready to serve. She's ready to serve corporations. And see, Kshama Sawant, who's a real socialist and actually pretty much, I won't say by herself, but she spearheaded getting that $15 minimum wage in Seattle, despite a lot of opposition, a lot of corporate money going against her. She got that $15 minimum wage in Seattle. And she says Biden and Democrats had no issue bypassing congressional oversight to attack Syria. 100%. 100%. They just dropped bombs in Syria. No. And then they informed Congress afterwards, after they did it. Even though it's written in the Constitution that Congress is the only body that has the ability to declare war. Yet Biden does an act of war. Before you get your check, by the way, he does an act of war. No congressional, but they respect Congress's rules and the process. But not this process. Not the one when it comes to foreign policy and war. They don't respect that. They'll do whatever they want for that. But when it comes to giving you an increase in minimum wage, they respect processes, guys. They respect it. Aren't you so happy? You're not going to get the minimum wage. You're not going to get your wage increase, but they respect the process. And that's all we could ever want, right? Respecting processes of corrupt bodies that aren't made for working class people. And then she says, but they apparently couldn't overrule the non-binding opinion of the Senate parliamentarian for a $15 per hour minimum wage. Democrats use rules and decorum to justify selling out working people. 100%. And we'll see what Jen Psaki has to say about that a little later in the segment. And it turns out AOC was upset about this. And I'm sure a lot of the squad and progressives in Congress were upset about this. And Jeff Stein reported this. AOC said there would have been I think he meant a lot more resistance over other measures had progressives known $15 per hour wage would fall out. These negotiations were predicated on the $15 per hour minimum wage. I think that's what really smoothed over the negotiations. You don't say they lied in these commitments you got in these backroom deals and these task forces. They lied about it. Wow. Who could have saw that coming? You see, you can't count on them to just be nice and give you something. It just simply doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. You can't just be happy about being at the table when the leader of the leader sitting at the head of that table is corrupt and will screw you over at a moment's notice, and then say, oh, it was the rules. The reason why I couldn't do it was the rules in the process. So, this is why people like myself, people like Brianna Joy Gray, Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kalinske, a lot of people came out for it. A lot of people for force to vote. Cornel West. Because power concedes nothing without a demand. Nothing. Not a single thing. They won't even concede a $15 per hour minimum wage, which is a compromise position. That's a compromise position because it really should be closer to between $20 and $24. A compromise position, we couldn't even get that. And here was the issue that I had. I was willing to give the Democrats, and the progressives, not really Democrats, but the progressives in the Democratic Party, I guess they are Democrats, the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they had their own plan. Maybe we just don't know how government works. Maybe they're right. I had conviction and forced to vote and actually using a leverage point for the first time in a long time. Progressives have power. I was on the side of using that as a leverage point to make sure that we got meaningful concessions moving forward that were tangible, written on paper, things that we could hold them to account, not backroom deals, task forces that the public doesn't know about, that people aren't really paying too much close attention to. Real concrete, hard things. This is what we want, and you're not going to be Speaker of the House unless we get these things. This is what we were fighting for. And AOC, and they had their own plan. AOC, Justice Democrats, the squad, Pramila Jayapal, Rashida Tlaib, they all had their own plan. And when I said, if they don't do this, they'll be revealing themselves, because this is a leverage point. This is a moment in time, the first in a long time, really, where we actually have power, where we can do something, or we can use a leverage point to get something. Let's use it right now. And AOC responded. She said, problem with this is that there is not enough thought given to step 2. The Dem votes aren't there yet, and with a razor-thin margin, the Dem no's are greater than the margin. So you issue threats, hold your vote, and lose. Then what? If you want to know who's opposed, look at the co-sponsor list. Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. Co-sponsor list means nothing. Kamala Harris co-sponsored Bernie's Medicare for All bill before the primaries. As soon as she got within a whiff of power, she had completely abandoned that, put forward a basically, corporate giveaway type of public option type plan. So co-sponsor list doesn't mean anything. Hakeem Jeffries, a bunch of corporate Democrats who take loads of money from the pharmaceutical, healthcare, insurance industry are on those co-sponsor lists. Doesn't mean anything. Most people don't even know what co-sponsor list is, like regular people. So they're fine being okay. They're okay with being on that. She says the Dem votes aren't there yet with a razor-thin margin that the Dem no's are greater than margin. Okay, so what are you going to do to get those no's to turn to yeses? You have to actually put pressure on them to turn those no's to yeses. Like, that's how that works, right? You have to make it so that, kind of like she was doing with impeachment, and the squad was doing with impeachment, force their hand, right? Make them go from, okay, maybe we'll just censure or whatever. No, we're going to do this impeachment. Really, the squad was the one that was pushing that heavy on social media and moved Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats to that point. We're saying do that same thing you did for impeachment for Medicare for all, right? Force a vote, make them go on the record, which she actually ended up arguing for is forcing them to be on the record. And so I think we gave a lot of thought to step two. And in fact, I think force the vote informs the next step, right? And the next step is you want to make sure you put that pressure on those people. So eventually, whether it's this time or the next time you put it up for a vote, they feel pressure from their constituents to actually vote yes. Because if there's not a vote ever, then they don't feel that pressure. I want to see them vote no during a pandemic. During a healthcare pandemic, I want to see them vote no on giving people healthcare. And they might, yeah, of course. But if your plan is to get more votes eventually and get more progressives in the office, won't it help if you have that as a cudgel you can use against them? Oh, you voted against healthcare in a pandemic. I'm going to go tell all your constituents, and I'm going to get this other person in the office who will vote yes. Like, that's how politics works, guys. And we all know that. This is why we were upset with this response. And she said, and she continues saying, in contrast, you can use leverage we were trying to use to get Medicare for all. She said to push through things that can happen and change lives, i.e. a $15 minimum wage vote in the first 100 days, doable. Elevating longtime progressive champions to important positions of leadership, also doable. That's the opportunity cost away. And a lot of us were saying, whoa. Joe Biden already says he supports the minimum wage. It already passed the House when the Republicans were in control. Obviously, didn't get a vote in the Senate, but it passed the House. We're using this leverage point for something they already support. And maybe that's where we were wrong, because we see that they actually don't support it. Maybe that should have been a part of the ask to force the vote. But so she says that. So we're already seeing they rolled over on the minimum wage because they, apparently they felt no pressure or force to actually do that. And so they rolled over on it. The most solid thing that Biden promised, they already rolled over on that. And then she also said elevating longtime progressive champions to important positions, i.e. committeeships. A lot of these bills have to go through powerful committees. And let's see what happened with the committeeships. In secret ballot vote, House Democrats overwhelmingly deny AOC a powerful committee seat. See, working within the party, working within a corrupt body, which is corrupt. You recognize that these people are corrupt because they take corporate money and then they legislate for those corporations against the people. When you can't just use backroom deals, to get these things done. Like, you might try and play the game in politics, but this is their game, right? They set the rules of the game. They'll change the rules. They'll move the goalposts. It's just going to be impossible for you to win that way unless you're talking about 30, 40 years down the road. And you really might end up being like Pelosi, where you're trying to force a vote in the 90s on healthcare, and then in 2020 you're denying that same vote that you were trying to force 25 years later. That's what politics does to you. And the same thing with Katie Porter, who was just unbelievable on the Financial Service Committee. I think she was a consumer protection type lawyer, maybe, because she's really, really keen, understands the ins and outs of the financial services, was questioning these Wall Street bankers and CEOs, just tearing them a new one. And they didn't like that. And they talked to the leadership, and they got her out. Now, I don't know why she didn't put that as one of her first committee spots. Maybe she thought she was just going to be a shoo-in. She could get on 2 other committees. But everyone else who applied for a waiver to get on a third exclusive committee, they got it. But Katie Porter didn't. And I'm guessing it's because she, really made all those Wall Street CEOs happy now. We all know the reason she didn't get on that seat is because the people that lead that seat, lead that committee, like Maxine Waters, they were listening to donors and the CEOs and the people that, help them stay in power by giving them money. They got her out of there as soon as they could. She even reduced they're the leader, they're the majority, and they reduced the committee spots and they kicked her out. Like, it just was so obvious, y'all. And it's upsetting. It's frustrating because she actually did do a lot of good on that committee, and now she's not going to be on it. And I know Jamie Dimon and the Wells Fargo CEO, all these people are extremely happy about that. And so David Sirota mentioned this because, obviously a whole Neera Tanden thing happened. I did videos on that, but they remarked that they're fighting their guts out to get near Tannen on the OMB. So they're fighting their guts out to get this corrupted power player who's brought in a bunch of money for the Democratic Party. They want her and this pretty non-consequential, it has power, but not that much power. They're fighting their guts out to get her confirmed for that. They're calling in Lisa Murkowski. They're calling in, all these Republicans to try and get votes because Manchin said he's not going to vote for it. By the way, when are they going to start actually putting any pressure on Joe Manchin? They're just going to let him tank everything. This is just unbelievable. So they'll do that for near Tannen, but they're not going to overrule the parliamentary on the minimum wage increase. They're not even going to fight for it. They're not even going to fight their guts out for it. No, they're okay with it. It's the process, guys. It's just the process. It's the way things work. And so let's see all that. Let's see all that Jen Psaki had to say, because she actually was asked a good question. Why did you say you're fighting your guts out for near Tannen, but you don't seem like you're putting that same energy into the fight for the minimum wage? And let's see what she had to say.
This question, which strikes me, the White House doesn't have 50 votes to confirm Neera Tanden as OMB director, and yet we heard from the White House Chief of Staff say that the White House they're going to fight our guts out was the phrase he used, to get her confirmed. So why push for that and not push as hard, one could say, for raising the minimum wage? You could make the argument that the American people stand to benefit more from a higher wage than they would from a chosen OMB director.
Well, I think that's mixing a few things kind of irresponsibly, if I'm just being totally honest. I would say on the minimum wage, the president included a raise of the minimum wage in his package because he felt strongly that it's long overdue, that men and women working hard, trying to make ends meet, shouldn't be living at the poverty level. That's why he put it in his package. There is a process that it goes through, a parliamentary process, when it's a reconciliation bill, as you know. But for people who haven't been following all the nitty-gritty of this, because it's a budgetary bill, that's why it went through the process. And again, I would send you to talk to leaders in Congress to see if they have the 50 votes necessary. But regardless, the president, the vice president have made the decision they're not going to move forward with that step. But also, it's not a simple process. It requires two steps. As it relates to Neera Tanden, she is somebody who has decades of experience. She is qualified. She is prepared to lead the budget team. And we're continuing, of course, to fight for the confirmation of every nominee that the president puts forward. We'll see if we have 50 votes. That's part of the journey. That's part of democracy in action.
You see that? You see all those obfuscations? You see all those dodges and swerves? Like, oh, man. It's really a great thing to watch. It really is, because you really get to understand why the Democrats suck so bad. Like, she's like, we respect the process, we respect the Senate rules, and I don't think that's a fair question that we're fighting for Neera Tanden and we're not fighting for the minimum wage, because it's not an easy process to get to overrule a parliamentarian. Well, she didn't even talk about firing a parliamentarian, which is an option, but she's talking about getting the votes to overrule them with the vice president. Okay, if it's not an easy process, that means you better get to work. But no, they don't care enough to fight for that. But they are having meetings to get Neera Tanden in, but not for minimum wage. So you see how she dips and dodges all this stuff and acts like, oh, it's not a fair question when it's a completely fair question, and they're not doing enough for the minimum wage. They're rolling over. Just rolling over. But they're a fight to get Neera Tanden in, but not for the minimum wage. It's unbelievable. And how are you going to go to those Georgia voters, or how are you going to go to any voters when you've been saying for months that you're going to get this minimum wage? You teased them, you dangled it, right in front of their face, and then all at the last second you're like, oh, sucks to suck. Guess we can't have it. Senate rules, parliamentarian who no one's ever heard about. Guys, it's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And what was the progressives' response? I guess you could say. What was their response to this? Well, here. Sorry, his name is Salil Kapoor, I believe. He reported this. Ro Khanna and 22 House Dems call on White House to ignore the parliamentarian and allow a $15 minimum wage in the COVID bill. So they sent a nicely worded letter, sternly worded letter to the White House, saying, we urge you, put this in the bill. We represent a lot of people. We represent the progressive wing of the party, and we're urging you to do this. White House has rejected this call. Immediately. They just rejected it. Immediately rejected it. What are they going to do in response? Are they going to withhold their vote for the House bill before it goes to the Senate? Are they going to do that? No, they'll vote for it anyway. It is what it is. We'll just fight for it later on down the line. In the next reconciliation bill, we'll try and get it in. In the next one, even though we couldn't get it in on this one, when it's easier to do things in the beginning because you have the mandate. It's the first 100 days. People are waiting on this. This is your leverage. Joe Biden needs this COVID relief bill to go through. He needs it to go through for his presidency. I mean, he's already lost a lot of points, changing from 2,000 to 1,400. Well, tightening who's the threshold of people that's going to get it. It's not immediate. It's not 2,000. He's already lost points on that. This is your leverage point. Are they going to use that to force a vote or to force the minimum wage? No. They'll vote for it anyway. How many times are we going to have to keep playing this game until we realize that if you're a progressive member of Congress, you're going to have to start withholding your vote on some of this stuff? And what are they going to tell you every time? Oh, there's all these people hurting that need this. You have to vote for it. You have to vote on this bill, how it is. When are you going to start being like, whoa, hold on. I know you need this bill to pass. You want this bill to pass. And so I'm going to make sure that this minimum wage is in this bill because you need it to pass and I have leverage. I have power. And actually, I'm going to use my platform in the media to show, yes, they're trying to tell you that we need to vote for this bill and make sure it passes because people are hurting. But I'm telling you that we need that minimum wage in there too because people are hurting and people need that wage increase and they need it now. They don't need it in September or try and get in the next reconciliation bill or in 2 years or in 4 years. They need it now. And so I'm calling on you, the American people, to help me out. Help me get this minimum wage for you by pressuring Joe Biden, pressuring Joe Manchin, pressuring Kirsten Sinema to put this in the bill. Are they going to do that? No. They'll just send a nice letter or sternly worded letter. Like, doesn't that piss y'all off? If you agree with me on the issues and on the policies, on the substance, well, can we agree on the strategy or at least agree that the strategy you've been employing is not working? It's not. Can we agree on that? Unbelievable. And Danny Haiphong put it from the Black Agenda Report. I want to have him on my show eventually because I think they do a great job, him and Margaret Kimberly. He says, Cuba has sent medical aid free of cost to 1/3 of the world during the pandemic. What did we do? We bought up all the vaccines, some of which we're letting go to waste because we don't have a cohesive plan to roll it out. Biden's plan is better than Trump's. There's no national database. It's just no cohesion at all. We just bought up all the vaccines when they first came out. Cuba's sent medical aid free of cost. What has the U.S. done? Tightened sanctions, which hurt the poorest of people in those countries, dropped bombs on Syria. We already covered that. And imposed massive economic pain upon millions. This is the difference between socialism and barbarism. I mean, right on. That's right on. But at least, we'll end it on a positive note. Because I want this to get through. I want the minimum wage. You guys see I'm passionate about this. Bernie Sanders vows to force the vote on the $15 minimum wage this week. Wow, so we're back to square one, forcing the vote. Wow. I'm glad he's doing it. And he's right. He's going to, when you actually force Joe Manchin to vote against the minimum wage in a pandemic, and actually, with his state being one of the poorest states in the union, and, which means that his constituents would stand to benefit a lot more from this minimum wage increase. You put them on the record. You actually pressure them to do this by forcing them to vote on it. Just like we were saying with Medicare for All. And, I had my feelings about it. I knew this kind of caused some type of rift in the left. And, I didn't want to be, seen as causing that or trying to further that for some type of personal reputation or whatever. All the smears that were put out there. I truly had conviction in this because I believed we need to start employing strategies like this to actually get things done, to get things passed. And, now I'm starting to feel a little vindicated. I think a lot of us are, because now they're starting to do that. Bernie Sanders is actually doing that. And it's good. It's great. I hope, it actually puts enough pressure on people like Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, Joe Biden to actually get these things passed. At least bring them up for a vote. and then we could put even more pressure campaigns on them. But it has to start there. And so I'm glad Bernie and hopefully the progressives within Congress are starting to employ these strategies. And let's keep the pressure on. Let's keep the heat on. Let's get this $15 minimum wage passed. Let's get Medicare for all up for a vote. And let's actually start fighting.